I'm Kevin Mulverhill. I'm currently the Franklin County Sheriff. I've been the sheriff for 6 years. Before that, I had a 23-year career with the New York State Police. I retired as the traffic sergeant in the State Police Troop B. And before that, I was 4 years in corrections. Basically born and raised right here in the North Country. My wife and I have raised 7 children. We're very proud of each and every one of them. We have a teacher, 2 corrections officer, a mechanical engineer, an art student, a criminal justice graduate, and a sophomore in high school. So we're really proud of our kids and what we've been able to do, what our family's been able to do. And I just want to thank everybody. I want to particularly thank the P-TECH students for allowing us here tonight. It really is a joy. It's a big part of politicking is getting out to the people and talking to people. And I want to speak for everybody, but really enjoy this. I really look forward to this, and I look forward to the questions tonight. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Kevin. I'm Matt Funiciello. I am running for Congress in the 21st District. I ran once 2 years ago. That was the first political race that I ran in. I am running with a party called the Green Party, which is a newer party. Many people may not have heard of, but the minor and major consequence of running as a Green is that you do not take corporate money. Many of us in this country are aware that corporations are the primary force by which people are being elected to Congress and the Senate in particular, national office. Not so much for these gentlemen. But the reality is if we want to fix that problem, maybe it's not Citizens United or McCutcheon that needs to be overturned by the Supreme Court. Maybe it's actually in all of our hands. Maybe we could just vote for people who've said, we're not going to take that money. I was born and raised in our district. I've coached hockey here. I raised my children here. I own a business. I bake bread, as Michelle pointed out, and I'm very sorry I didn't bring you any, but I want to take that check with me. You could consider it a campaign donation. I'll give you a lot of bread, I promise. That's a sizable one. But essentially, I'm running for a couple very simple reasons, and because I've already exceeded my minute, I will just give you 3. And that is that we would like to see single-payer health care in the United States. That's one thing that Greens would like. It's the age of Medicare, 65 years old. Turn it to 0. You've got a fully funded universal health care model for everybody in the country. There is a congressional bill. There are very few sponsors. It would save us $600 billion in public money overnight. And according to most international studies, we'd have better health care too. A living wage. It may sound strange for a businessman to say this. I employ 35 people, but a living wage is not $7.25 an hour. Most of you who are going to go to school don't deserve to get out and make $9 or $10 an hour either. You have student loans to pay off. Not if you elect a Green president, because we're going to bail out the students too, and the schools. We're going to go back to having a state-owned school system that is public. So private schools can continue to spend $40,000, $60,000, $80,000 a year per student, but we're going to go back to a time that's not that long ago where you would have tuition-free schools for those of us who are working class, and we would have a debt jubilee for the 43 million people who owe student debt at this point in time. So vote Green in November. As it was said, I need to leave early. I have a competing event in Tupper Lake in a little while that I just wanted to make sure I got up here to say hi. I hope I have time to answer 1 or 2 questions before I leave. I will turn it over now. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Good evening. Colin Reed is here. I guess I'm introducing Colin. Thank you for hosting this, and I want to thank all the students here tonight for all the hard work they did, and the faculty on St. Clinton Community College for being such gracious hosts. And congratulations, Michelle, to your lovely honor this evening. It's great to be here for that. My name is Billy Jones. I was raised on a family dairy farm in Chattagay, New York. Then I entered the Department of Corrections, actually operated my family dairy farm for several years after graduating. Entered the Department of Corrections, and I'm a 20-year veteran in the Department of Corrections. In 2009, I was elected village mayor of Chattagay, and then in 2011, I chose to run for county legislator. I've been a Franklin County legislator for the past 6 years and been the chair of the board for the past 4. The reasons I am running for New York State Assembly. It's because I have a 3-year-old daughter, and I want her to grow up in the North Country. I want her to grow up with a sound education. I want her to live in a safe community, and I want her to get a good paying job when she graduates. college and to be in the North Country. We have to keep our young people in the North Country. So those are some of the reasons I'm running. I look forward to a nice, lively discussion tonight, and thank you so much for having us. I think the P-TECH program is excellent. I'm a big fan. I love how the workforce development and the education can come together. It's just what the North Country needs. So thank you very much.
Well, I'm Colin Reed. First of all, I think you said many of the things. I want to congratulate Michelle on this P-TECH program. It's just an amazing program. It's all about workforce development. Clinton Community College plays a really central role in workforce development. We're very fortunate to have P-TECH and community college right in our community. Of course, we have a four-year college as well, too. So these are really good things to have within our city, and I'm really grateful for it. I think this is really about tonight, looking at the faces in the room, it's about the next generation and the type of city and the type of government we leave for this next generation. And it's challenging to be a small city in the northern part of our country. You see a lot of the small cities and the rural regions declining, and I view that as an opportunity because I recognize if we do things a little bit differently, if we look at the best examples we can find anywhere in the country on how a small city can thrive, we can take advantage of this energy and actually go in a different direction than many of the other smaller cities do. So I'm very optimistic about our future, but it really begins on believing that we need to leave a better city for our children and our young people than we were given ourselves. And I also use the term Plattsburgh. Of course, we use the term Plattsburghian, but I also like to use the term Plattsburghagenian. Those people that come back to Plattsburgh after perhaps going somewhere after they finish their high school. Maybe they go off to college somewhere. Maybe they even work somewhere in another city, like Austin, Texas, or Eugene, Oregon, or somewhere really exciting. We would then want to bring those skills back somehow, and that creates a lens that I'd like to look at our city with. Thank you.
It is. So if you gentlemen could pass that back and forth, we'll use this one over here for the moderators. And we're ready for our first question from Mel. Stand up if you want to. And this is to all the candidates.
By 2018, 60% of jobs require a college degree. One local business, Swarovski Lighting, assists employees with up to 90% of their college education cost, but other businesses don't have the resources. How can we further educate our current workforce, workers between the age of 25 and 40, to allow our local businesses to advance?
Mr. Jones, you have the microphone.
And I'm first. Guess I drew the short end of the straw. That is a good question. First of all, we need to make college affordable. You mentioned most employers can't afford to do what they do. And we need to make college affordable. We need to help colleges become affordable for our people. Because colleges are under a lot of mandates also. As you know, and we probably have a few board members here of the Clinton Community College. They're under mandates also, and we have to help them. Being, if I'm so elected to be your state representative, we have to help them because unfunded mandates play a role in that and play a role in college tuition. You mentioned the ages between 25 and 40. A lot of people between the ages of 25 and 40 have children. We should also set up a program if they want to go back to school to help with taking care of their children, with daycare. Because that is, I know being a father, I know daycare is an essential part of a young adult or an adult going back to school. It's tough to do. So some of those things will help. We need to make college more affordable. We can do that in government. We can take some of these unfunded and restrictive mandates off from our local schools. And also, I believe if you want to go back to school, you should have every opportunity to do that. And that should be our job to help in that process.
Mr. Jones, Mr. Mulverhill. And we're giving the candidates a minute 30 for all the responses, and there will be no rebuttals.
Did I have any time left?
I I think we need to do what we've been doing. You know, that particular age group that you're talking about, you know, what we've done recently with the wind towers and a couple of different projects, Bombardier, is we've had actually BOCES create a program, a welding program. We train people to be welders and we put them to work in those companies. Those companies can tell us what they need and then we can respond to that. And we can use local resources for that. Some of it's gonna be college, some of it's gonna be trades. You know, as was mentioned earlier, you know, we're talking about maintenance facilities and maintenance facility people. You know, we need to take and work with our colleges, and here in our local community, work with our colleges and our vocational operations, and train people for those jobs. They're there, and they're coming. You know, you live in a great part of the country right now. We're growing, you know, and we're poised to grow. So those jobs are coming. We have to prepare our workforce, and that's part of what you guys are doing. That's what this P-TECH program is all about. This is about putting people to work, and not just work, good jobs, good paying jobs, so that you'll stay here. You know, because whether we like it or not, you're our tax base, okay? And we need you here. We need you having good paying jobs. We need you to be happy. We need you to be safe. So we're just going to continue what we're doing. We're going to help with education, and we're going to provide more vocational programs where they're needed.
Thank you, Mr. Mulverhill. Mr. Funiciello?
Essentially, the Greens have as I said earlier when I was introducing myself, an idea. And the idea is that public education be free through higher education as well. So one of the issues that was brought up by the Chancellor from Clarkson, I believe, who spoke earlier, who spoke about the programs they have that are vocational in places like Germany. Where it may surprise you to know, when you take your E-levels, you might split off at 12 or 13 years old into actually being in a vocational school. You're still going to learn some math and some English, but you might also be learning how to build and design BMWs. And you might end up getting a job by the time you're 18 or 19, a union job, paying $70,000 or $80,000 a year, building BMWs, and you might get a free one after you've been there for 3 years. Here in the United States, if you become an auto mechanic like my son, you start at SUNY Ken, you work summers, you work for $10 or $12 an hour changing oil at a dealership somewhere, like a franchise. You know, because you're not going to get a real job as a mechanic. Being a mechanic now is you take a computer that costs $800, you charge the customer $1,500 for it and $300 in labor, you screw the computer in, and the customer has no idea what's wrong with their car or what you actually fixed. We all have had this experience who own cars. But my son has this 2-year degree, and he left there $28,000 in debt. You know, and again, he appreciates the degree, and it was an education of sorts, but it was vocational school. And within a year, because he has a great work ethic, because he was raised by me, and he worked at 2 o'clock in the morning baking bread and picking up barrels and bags of dough, he convinced some guys in construction that he could do their job, even though he's 5'6". And he was right. And within a year, he worked himself up to being a 22-year-old supervisor of guys who are 40 and 50, who probably meet your questions parameters when it comes to being somewhat questionable on a work ethic level. How do we fix that for the corporate interests who are involved? And one of the answers is that we nationalize many of the things we're producing in this district, in CD21, that right now are essentially being produced by private manufacturers. And the reason why we do that is because we focus on, again, sustainable renewable energy. Why can't we have micro businesses all around the district that are making wind turbines? Why can't we have them making photovoltaics? Why can't we send our engineering force out to help us find residential applications for solar or wind that right now are unaffordable to the average homeowner? The answer to all these questions is we can, if we start spending our money more wisely. I believe we can. I believe we can have free school, vocational and otherwise, and I believe we can stop the subsidy of for-profit business and nationalize some of our larger infrastructure businesses.
Thank you. Mr. Reed?
First, I think what we need to do is recognize that those jobs that people took one time, they'd graduate from high school, they'd stay with the job for 40 or 50 years, they'd probably do about the same sort of things until they retire. There's very few of those jobs left. I think the average person changes careers 2 or 3 times during their lifetime, and even if you did stay with one job, the expectations of constant education and re-education, getting used to new computer systems and new machinery, etc., is really pretty substantial. So without continuing education, I think we're really putting ourselves at a disadvantage. So I think the tool to that is have unlimited free community colleges for not only your first 2 years, but any 2 years, or any period of retraining and re-skills, bringing people up to speed. So I think that's the way you do it, is by using the community college and the technical training, and recognize that these are fundamental strategic aspects for a competitive country, something we just need to invest in. We have to invest in our people, because we invest an awful lot in our machines and our robotics. We also have to invest in the people that need to run these things.
Thank you, Mr. Reed. Mr. Derrick has joined us. Mr. Derrick, welcome.
Thank you.
If you could, in maybe just a few seconds, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then I'll ask the same question that we asked the other candidates.
Thanks, Thom. I'm Mike Derrick. I'm from Peru, New York, and I'm running for Congress here in the North Country. I actually went to school here in Plattsburgh, Peru and Plattsburgh, and then left and spent 28 years in the U.S. Army. And I moved back home. I live in the same home where my parents lived in Peru, New York, and I've been running for Congress for about a year now. And so I'll leave it to that in terms of an introduction, and what's the question?
All right, the very first question was, by 2018, 60% of jobs will require a college degree. One local business, Swarovski Lighting, assists employees with up to 90% of their college education cost, but other businesses don't have the resources. How can we further educate our current workforce, workers between the ages of 25 and 40, to allow our local businesses to advance?
All right, well, that's a really good question, and the fact that we're here at Clinton Community College is important, because you here have done something remarkable in that you have partnered with local businesses here in Plattsburgh, and the Institute for Advanced Manufacturing, which will open up late in 2017, is going to be a great example of how local business and the needs they have in terms of their workforce can be met by people who live actually here in Clinton County. And so many people around New York State, as I travel around New York State, are looking at our town, our county, as a great example of that public-private partnership that will allow our young people in this community to be trained for the jobs we know we have now here in Clinton County, in the Plattsburgh area, and the ones we anticipate having in the future. And so, I think we are leading the way in that regard in our part of New York State here. And, I agree with Colin. That's the only other comment I heard, but, the idea that we can't impose the cost of an education entirely on our students. We have to invest in our young people, because, in fact, they are our future. I have 4 kids, and I know that it's very, very hard as parents and as young people going through college to manage those educational costs if you don't have help from different levels of government.
Thank you, Mr. Derrick. The next question will come from Hallock.
This is for the Assembly and Congressional candidates. From 2004 to 2013, teen pregnancy rates have been on the decline. Some regions have seen upticks in pregnancy rates for a year or two, but the decline has been affected nearly every county. As the rates decline, are you planning to continue with programs which help educate and provide resources that are responsible for this decline?
Everybody gets a minute 30. Why don't we begin with Mr. Mulverhill?
We absolutely want to continue with those programs. Teen pregnancy can be a tragedy. It can ruin somebody's career. It can ruin their whole life. If we can continue to decline that stat, then we're in a better position as an industrialized country. We need to take care of our teens. We need to put them in a position where we can send them to school, and they can learn, and they can get themselves a great career. Here in the North Country, we have an advantage to that, because we're so much closer here. We're so much closer knit community. We can help each other out. Programs that help decrease teen pregnancy, which is an issue throughout the country, and it just makes sense to follow those.
We'll keep the Assembly candidates together. Mr. Jones?
Thank you. I think the decrease of teen pregnancy is one of our biggest accomplishments here in the education, healthcare field that we've done in the North Country. I think that's a great statistic, and we should actually increase the amount of teen education, early childhood education, to help our students deal with this. I'm a firm believer in that, and we need to increase funding for that. Childhood sex ed, or teen sex ed, education programs, we absolutely need it in our schools, and I would be in favor of increasing that. It's as simple as that.
Thank you. Mr. Funiciello, would you like to go next?
I would only like to go next because very immediately I'm going to have to leave and drive to Tupper Lake, as Mike understands this is a big district. So I apologize for that. I wish to thank the students for this. This is beautiful, and it won't go on my desk. It will go on my workbench next to some loaves of bread tomorrow, and next time I come, I will bring you some. Thank you very much. It's a very divisive issue to talk about teen pregnancy, because what we're really talking about is caring for children who may not be wanted or we may not be prepared to have. And that conversation really is about abortion. So rather than have a debate about abortion, one of the things I like to do with people who are very strongly feeling one way or the other about it is talk instead about funding for Planned Parenthood. I am a very staunch advocate for Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood provides an unbelievable number of health services for those who are poor and indigent. And many of those of us are in the working class and we have jobs. We just don't have health insurance. So I think it's very important that we take a look at groups like Planned Parenthood that spend so much of their time and effort educating people, offering testing for sexually transmitted diseases. They offer condoms and other methods of contraception for free to people who are teens, who might be living in a household with parents who don't agree with them about their activities. And in reality, if we want to have a society that is abortion-free, we need to be a little bit more adult and understanding of the behaviors of our own children are. And I think that it is unrealistic to expect that we can turn it all to zero and lock our daughters in our basements until they're 30, although I certainly tried, in a nice way. Can't be done. And I know a lot of teen mothers who decided to have babies who didn't have the support that they needed in the society at large. When we consider that in the formal education environment, when we offer people a free public education at the higher level, and there's also a child care component involved, it makes it possible for someone who is 16 or 17 or 18 to go back into an adult learning environment if they would like to have the child. I think it's important as a society that we support that, so that every child is a wanted child who has equal opportunity. I thank you for your invitation tonight, and again, sorry that I do have to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Funiciello. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you, Thom. We've had some great ideas on the stage already. I don't want to go back through those. I want to take this in a little different direction for you and talk about families and the strength of families. So the rate of teen pregnancies has gone down, and that's gone down through education and access to contraception, and that's had a great and positive effect on our society. So how can we take that to the next level? And having stronger families where we have kids who grow up in stable homes, we know that makes a difference in terms of reducing teen pregnancies. And so the more we as a society can encourage families that are strong and stable, the better off we will be, the greater fall we will see in that statistic. And we can do things like investing in the broader things in our society that are going to make it better and easier for our families. And so I'll just take it in that direction to add to the conversation.
All right, thank you very much. The next question is to the mayoral candidates and the assembly candidates. Organizations like the North Country Chamber of Commerce promote our region through campaigns like the Adirondack Coast and I Love New York. Promotions are improving tourism by encouraging exploration of the region with inexpensive cultural and outdoor activities which take place from spring through the fall. We would like to see more accessibility to winter sports and activities. Are you aware of any funding streams, locally or federally, available that your office could try to procure to improve access? Mr. Reed?
I think it actually begins with the volunteer groups, the nonprofits that are excited about doing something in this area in the winter. We have a long winter, although today wouldn't be a good indication of that, but we do have a long winter here. We need to celebrate. You go up to Quebec City, and they have fantastic festivals all winter long. So we should be doing that, and that's going to be championed primarily by individuals that are passionate with getting things going in the winter, just as they have in the summer. The first weekends, the downtown rise and things I'm talking about in the city, the 30 City, the murals project, these are all kind of summer-oriented activities, but that same energy could easily be transformed into winter-related activities as well. So we work with our service groups, the Rotaries, the Elks, the various service organizations in town to see what we can do for some major winter carnivals. Before I moved here, I lived in Alaska where actually winter was probably about 9 months of the year. We had great events in Fairbanks, ice carving, very much like you see in Saranac Lake. I'd love to see a skating rink somewhere in the city of Plattsburgh, just a small little kids skating rink to get people outside in afternoons, nice afternoons on the weekends. These don't need to cost much money, but if we mobilize that energy, we could then go and start looking for grant money to do it. It would be embraced by the Chamber of Commerce. It's consistent with our destination master plan. These are things that I think are very low-hanging fruit that we just haven't done much in the past, but I'd love to see us do more in the future. And really, it's not government that's going to do that for us. It's government that's going to remove the roadblocks and provide for the encouragement so we all do it together. I think we're capable of it.
Thank you. Mr. Jones?
I'm going to go along the line of what Colin said. I believe we've seen it around the North Country that certain groups, Rotary or the Elks or whatever non-for-profit groups and clubs can team up with local governments to build skating rinks and to do outdoor activities, and I think that's a good approach to go about it. The state can provide a framework for that, and we can help get grant funding and grants for that. I'm fortunate I am a member of the Regional Economic Development Council. We put through money every year targeted to some of those events and some of those things through our tourism money, and we can, if I am elected, certainly my office will help out local municipalities and non-for-profits get those outdoor activities in our local communities. But I think it starts from the ground level, the local communities and towns, and certainly the state should have a part in that and providing the framework for that.
Thank you. Mr. Mulverhill?
I think any grant process needs to start with a plan. So I guess we would throw it back to you. If you can give us a plan, what you want for recreational activities, if you want to build on what we have, I mean, a lot of our communities, Malone, Saranac Lake, Tupper Lake, they all have winter activities, whether it's ice fishing or winter carnivals. What we need to do is build on those. So if you have a plan, there are grants available. We just recently, there was a grant that was issued to the, Malone Minor Hockey for their arena, specifically for a winter sport. So the grants are out there. What we need to do as a community is devise a plan. Because when you come forward with a plan, and you have what that plan is gonna cost, it's much easier to get grants. So as a community, using your community groups, just like they mentioned, with Rotary, Elks, Lions, get all these folks together. It's a community event. Your outside recreation activity are gonna be community events. And the other thing is, you need the community to participate. You can put together the greatest recreation program in the world. If your community doesn't come out and participate, you're not necessarily a failure, but you're not a success. If you're gonna be a success, you need a plan. So if we get our plan together, we'll get the grants, we can make it happen. We can make it happen together.
Thank you. Hannah has the next question.
This question is for the mayoral and assembly group. Approximately 15% of men and 30% of women in jails have serious mental defects. 1 in 4 victims of law enforcement officer-involved shootings are mentally ill. Do you have any suggestions on how we can educate law enforcement to improve our treatment of our mentally ill community members? Also, are you in favor of the use of body cameras on Plattsburgh Law Enforcement Office?
Actually, Mr. Mulverhill. Well, part of my job as a sheriff is to run the jail. And I can tell you that mental health is an issue and continues to be an issue, not just in the jail, but throughout the country. It's not not uncommon to have, 4 or 5, maybe even a half a dozen inmates a year that suffer from severe mental health issues that we can't find bed space for and can't get help for. One of the things that we've done at the jail that we've initiated is, we started a program with North Star Mental Health. We have a mental health counselor that's actually on staff constantly at the jail. So every inmate that's brought into the Franklin County Jail receives a mental health and also a substance abuse evaluation. And we get them into a program. Like I say, some of them have severe issues. The unfortunate part of that is we have to wait for bed space. There are facilities available where they can go to get help, but the beds just aren't there. And until we increase funding, until the state increases funding and we get increased bed space, we're going to continue to have a mental health issue. So we need to help those folks. There's no doubt about it. We can do that in the facility. We do that through mental health programs, but there are some that we just can't reach. The other part of that is staffing. If you don't staff the jail correctly with corrections officers, then you endanger the safety of the corrections officers and also the safety of these folks, these inmates that are mentally ill. We need proper staffing in our correctional facilities. And it should go without saying, but it doesn't. And as far as body cameras, I think body cameras have proven to help in these instances where these shootings and whatnot are taking place. My only caution to you as a police officer is not everything gets captured on video. And if it's not on video, it doesn't mean it didn't happen or didn't happen a certain way. So that video is just a tool, and I think we should remember that. It's not an absolute. So I'm all for body cameras, and I'm all for improving mental health in the correctional facilities, but also out in the general communities.
Thank you, Mr. Jones.
Yes, our law enforcement, they have a tough job now. We're asking them to do a lot. They deal with a lot of, our police in the streets deal with a lot of issues, and they deal with these people that have mental health issues. We've come a long way in the mental health field. We used to be in the darkness, and we wouldn't talk about it, and we wouldn't get them the individuals the proper help that they needed. I think we have come a long way in that, but we need to improve upon that. We need to help these individuals have access to care. It's all about having access to care in our communities. And us as elected officials, we can help in that process. We can get more clinics. We can increase our funding for people that have mental health issues, and we need to do that. As far as the body cameras, I think they can be an effective tool to help law enforcement and our society. But I would go along with what Mr. Mulverhill said. You got to be careful, and we have to capture everything in regards to that.
Thank you. Mr. Reed, you're next. And Mr. Reed, for you, the question will be about body cameras, whether Plattsburgh Police Department should use them. It currently does not.
And I'll actually defer to my colleagues that have thought about that issue of body cameras quite a bit because they're in that industry. And I have a qualified support for that as well. I think that it's a tool, something that we should be taking into consideration. But let me expand the scope of your question just a little bit. You raised the issue of mental health. Mental health I put in that category of things that afflict individuals that are part of our community through no fault of their own. But I'd also put in that same category heroin and opiate abuse. And let me kind of explain why. You might say, well, heroin abuse, people do make choices to do heroin, but many of the people that are being hooked into opiate abuse start very innocently. It might be with a knee injury during a high school football game, or they may come back from Afghanistan or Iraq and have an injury where they require some opiates to relieve their pain. When that prescription runs out, they become hooked, so they'll try to get their opiates some other way, and they start buying them on the street. And when that becomes too expensive, they're introduced to a very cheap alternative heroin, and they're going down a rabbit hole that's very difficult to escape from, and very much like mental health, often it's no fault of their own. So typically we worry about the criminal aspect, the crime aspect of these problems, and we talk about enforcement and putting people in jail, interdicting drugs and all that kind of stuff, certainly an avenue to treat these things. But we need to look more broadly. For instance, with opiate abuse and heroin, the first thing we should do is prevention. Do something to rehabilitate these individuals before it gets to this point. Second thing we need to do is somehow rehabilitate or remedy the causes or the problems that it also causes for the greater community. And third, once they are hooked, have the beds available, do the proper rehabilitation, make sure that the entire community comes together in a multi-pronged approach rather than viewing these things too unidimensionally. You know, in life, it's very complicated. We try to look for very simplistic solutions to very complicated problems, and in my experience, that tends to not work very well. We have to engage the entire community, solicit the resources of the nonprofits and the hospitals and the doctors and anybody that can help, and do it all together rather than just treat it kind of unidimensionally as a criminal problem.
Thank you. The next question will be to Mr. Derrick and the Assembly candidates from Malcolm.
Agriculture is a driving economic force in the North Country. With the financial benefits comes environmental and health issues. According to Toxins Action Center, there's a strong correlation to pesticide use and neurological disorders, specifically cancer in children. What are the current regulations governing pesticide application, and are you aware of any proposed changes to the regulations?
Thank you. That's a great question, especially in a place like the North Country where agriculture is such an important part of not only our economy, but our life up here. And so there are about 1 million people in this country who are trained to apply pesticides, and that's a certification they get. In front of the Environmental Protection Agency right now in Washington is a set of proposals to improve the training for those people who are certified and trained to apply pesticides, especially the more dangerous ones. And you know, we need to pass that kind of regulation. That's a good regulation, because if we could do that, if we could apply the pesticides that we need, but we know can be dangerous if improperly used, we could reduce, for example, the diseases or the illnesses caused by those pesticides by about 800 in every year. The other thing I just want to wrap into this real quick is climate change. And you know, one of the things we have faced here in the Adirondacks is acid rain. I think everybody here knows that term. And we, over the decades, last couple decades, have succeeded in getting government regulations which would bring down the level of acid rain and reduce the effect on our soils, on our forests, on our waters, and on our air here in the North Country. We have an opportunity in Washington right now called the Clean Power Plan to further reduce acid rain. And you talked about toxins a moment ago in your question. One of the most dangerous toxins we face is mercury. And mercury falls from the sky with rain or snow. It becomes ethyl mercury. And then it gets into our water, into our soil, and into fish and wildlife, and even our livestock. And so it is a toxin. So we have the opportunity to pass the Clean Power Plan in Washington. That would reduce toxins in our environment. That's the kind of thing I want to do when I get elected to Congress, because those are steps we need to take.
All right, and now from the state perspective, and gentlemen, if you need me to repeat the question at any point.
I think this is a subject that's kind of near and dear to my heart. I grew up on a farm, a dairy farm, and operated a dairy farm after that. There are a couple of agencies that do regulate, on the federal level, regulate pesticides. On the federal level, it's the EPA, and on the state level, the DEC. We need to make sure that, as Mr. Derick said, those are being applied properly. We need to make sure that farmers are doing that, and that the trained professionals are doing that also. But let's put onto those agencies and make them aware of, and make everyone aware of something under a fact-based knowledge. We need science and fact-based knowledge about pesticides. We can't just say, you know, all pesticides are bad, because whether you like it or not, our farmers do need pesticides. You need it to grow an abundance of crops, and we need it. But they should be regulated. I think we've come a long way in this field. I know we have, since even I was a child, where there would be no training, and people would go out there without any protection and apply these pesticides. They've come a long way. We need to continue to do that, but it should be in fact-based science on how we can regulate that. So I do agree there should be regulation, But we do need pesticides to grow our crops.
Thank you. And Mr. Mulverhill.
I know part of the question asked about legislation. There's a number of legislative agendas that are out there on the state level. One of them has to deal with formaldehyde and any children's products. Okay. Another one that is more on the local level that you could ask your own local boards, whether it's your county board or your town boards that they have, is to notify your neighbor. That's something that's done on a local level. So in the event that your neighbor's using a pesticide, if you have a local regulation or a local law, then you're using a pesticide and you have to notify your neighbor, it kind of educates everybody. What kind of pesticide are you using? How much are you gonna use? What is it we're trying to get rid of or encourage to get out of here? I mean, those are local things that we can do there again. We can do that as a group and notify each other. It's all about being open. You know, if you're gonna use a pesticide, you know, the license requirements, the amount, I mean, those are all scientific. And those, let's face it, we all know that changes. You know, we grew up and, you know, back when I was a kid, you know, DDT was a big thing. We talked about DDT and how it was great because it was doing great things. Well, then come to find out, it was not only killing animals and injuring animals in the environment, it was killing and injuring us as well. So science evolves. But I think an important start with these pesticides and what's happening locally is getting that notify your neighbor law.
All right, thank you very much. I'll take this opportunity to remind everybody to silence their cell phones.